Hello and welcome to today's panel on the state of the retail consumer, a study conducted by George Mason University's Center for Retail Transformation and made possible due to people in this room, Microsoft, Icertis, Cognizant. Thank you very much. My name is Gautam Vadkepat. I am the director for the Center for Retail Transformation and an associate professor here at the School of Business at Mason. And in this webinar, we'll reveal some of the key findings of an ongoing study specifically around how consumer spending is evolving in today's environment, what factors drive consumers to shop between online versus in-store, and what are the primary pain points for consumers while shopping across these channels. So before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions, as always, please post them in the Q&A session. We'll answer them as when time allows, and we'll try to get to all the questions. But before we discuss what we have learned from the study and why we conducted the study, let's go around and meet the panelists who are joining us from different parts of the US to share the experience and expertise. So without further ado, let's go around the virtual room and meet the panelists. Let's go in alphabetical order. Brett, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Thank you. Hello from Atlanta. I appreciate you having me. So my name is Brett Coogan. I am an experience and innovation strategist at Idea Couture, which is the human-centered design and strategy function of Cognizant Digital Experience. So I'm a consultant, so I work across multiple industries, but I started my career in shopper insights. So I'm very excited to participate today. I'll do a quick intro of Cognizant because I don't know how many folks are familiar, but we are a global company with over 350,000 employees focused on helping our clients modernize technology, reimagine processes, and just transforming experiences. I'll be the first to tell folks I do not consider myself to be a technical person, but one of my favorite things about working at Cognizant is that we have so many of those smart technical people. So I get the fun job of helping our clients capture actionable insights about their customers or even employees, and designing super cool experiences that Greater Cognizant helps come to life and really drive business results. So thank you again for having me.
Well, thank you. And in alphabetical, if I know my letters, David.
Hi there, David Leibowitz. I'm outside of Richmond, Virginia, so Microsoft, and I lead the retail and consumer goods industry team. That means so I come from a background of retail and consumer goods, literally in the shoes of retail and working with soft goods, fashion companies, also electronics. My team has supported or sat in the shoes of merchandising, supply chain, retail excellence. And I think similar to Brett, like less on the technical side, more about identifying challenges and opportunities for our customers in the retail and consumer goods space. And so we're able to have those authentic conversations, hopefully solve those with technology and an agile approach. So always glad to be here. Great to partner with George Mason University. We do talk to the largest brands, well-known brands on the planet, but it's always great to hear, what's the signal on the street. So love to hear about this, the state of the retail consumer study, who's actually buying and consuming the products and services from all the brands that we service.
Well, thank you for making time. Mark, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gautam. My name is Mark Hasting, and I'm the Chief Commerce and Operating Officer at Blaine's Farm and Fleet. I'm coming to you from a grand opening, our store here in La Crosse, actually anniversary late last year, our 40th anniversary. And but we are a female-owned private organization. Her dad and uncle started this organization back in 1955. And before we even had discount stores, and they found a little bit of a loophole that if you signed up for a fleet, and a fleet would be, if you had 5 engines or more, you could sell things to as a discount. And so we were open for all customers, but mostly it was farmers, and farmers of course had 5 engines because they had a truck and a tractor and a lawnmower and this and the other. And so they would all kind of get their fleet card. And that's where fleet came into the name. But we're a general merchandise store. We call ourselves a modern day general store. Some of our biggest categories are soft lines, pet, ag. We have a large sporting goods department, automotive, and we also do automotive services. So we'll change tires and brakes and oil changes and things like that. Housewares, power tools. So it's predominantly shopped by mail. My previous background was at Target, where our customer was a female. We always referred to her as referred to them as a her. So quite a bit of a different experience. And maybe a quick fun fact: this year we will sell over 400,000 baby chicks. And Brett and I were talking about chicks, but we'll sell over 400,000 chicks across the 45 stores that we have. So it's pretty impressive number of chicks that we do sell.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. And then last but not the least, Phil, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Phil Berry. I am coming from right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and I work for iCertis, which probably is a company that a lot of people haven't heard of yet, but will soon. It is a leader in contract management software solutions. So what we do basically is we basically help turn your static documents into actionable agreements by leveraging AI powered platform, so that if you think about a contract, once you sign it, you put it somewhere and you forget about it. There's a lot of great information in those contracts, though, that you do forget about. So what we're able to do is help not only with managing the contract process, but also being able to leverage AI to pull out the important information in those contracts that you'll need to, for example, just being pricing terms. If you think about, even in the retail consumer goods space, there's a lot of rebates and growth incentive programs. That information is forgotten, but for a lot of your suppliers, to be honest. So that information is something that we can easily pull out and remind you, hey, you're supposed to have so-and-so, they owe you, money at the end of the quarter or the end of the year type of thing. So, and then just quickly about me, my background is retail and consumer goods. So, basically I started in the grocery industry 25 years ago, and then in category management, and then moved on to global sourcing, product development, and then consulting before joining iCertis 18 months ago. And in my role here, I'm the liaison across the organization to help them align and support strategic objectives for the retail and consumer goods space. Thanks, Gotham. I appreciate you inviting us to this event.
Well, thank you. This is fun. I learned a few things about chickens and contracts already, so I'm hoping we'll learn a lot more stuff. I want to kick things off by just going through and giving a brief thesis for the study. Now, some of you in the audience might be wondering, well, there's so many studies out there. Do we really need another study? Look, Mason is an academic R1 research institution. We're tasked with training new talent. So we wanted to develop an in-house study that could allow us to capture consumer sentiment as it was evolving, capture the temporal aspects, see how people's shopping behaviors are changing, how the pain points are changing, all the time training students in a skill that I think everyone in this room is going to agree is fundamental, which is gathering data, getting good quality data, analyzing the data, and telling stories based on the data. So this study is that bridge to connect the industry, to kind of give relevant information, as well as train students in the art of data analysis. So that's what we really try to do. The study has 3 objectives: understand how consumer spending is evolving, and we gather data every month. It's a consumer mindset study. We try to understand why people shop across different channels and what their pain points are, and how we did this. And look, I'm here just as spokesperson for the students who conducted this, which is why they're probably in the audience. So the way we did this was that we had students actually gathering a lot of the data, seeing what has been collected before to understand what's the state of the field. And then they embarked on qualitative consumer journeys to really understand shopping behavior, pain points, based on which we built out a questionnaire, and we gather data every month to try and understand how these trends are evolving. So this is a consumer mindset study. So we have, in this wave of data, we have about 160 respondents after the data has been cleaned and students figured out how to clean the data. And we'll continue tweaking this every way we add new questions to the study. So, and just as a brief background about the respondents, about 60% are female, about 55% have a college degree, 70% of the respondents live within the age group of 25 to 54. So that gives you the biases that is inherent in the data and the mindset that's been captured in the data. So now, without further ado, let's just get into the data itself. And the way we wanted to structure this was I'll present some data points, stop sharing the screen so that people can see each other's face better, and then just have a discussion around what that data means for retailers. So that's the approach we're going to take. So the first part of the study was to look at consumer spending. And as you can see here, we ask questions with regards to, do consumers expect to spend more? And if they do, is it between discretionary versus essentials, a classification that became prevalent during COVID? And I think Mark said wants versus needs. And then we also try to look at, given the macroeconomic conditions with financing being constrained, how people are trying to finance their purchases. So this was one of the first nuggets. What you can see is that 61% of the respondents expect to spend more, but they expect to spend more in essentials versus discretionary. And you're also seeing tightening of the spending where they're dipping less into savings. They're not getting new credit lines. So you're seeing that aspect as well. So I'm going to stop sharing screens here. And I'm going to kind of throw it out to the panel to kind of get your viewpoints on what we just shared and get your thoughts around these questions. So maybe we can go around the room and get your thoughts on the specific spending aspects that I just shared. And we'll go around the room and maybe we can start off with David, if you want to kick things off for us.
Sure. Yeah. So some of that's, it's kind of eye-opening. It's interesting. I'm just kind of going around the different data points that you shared. But expecting to spend more and seeing that as an uptick, and also expecting to spend more on essentials. I don't think there are any big surprises, but I think it teases out perhaps some of the next set of questions, which would be, do consumers expect to spend more and shift more towards essentials just in general? Or are they expect to spend more due to inflation? And we know that, there are incredible inflationary pressures right now. And we've seen that continue. So I suspect, David's hypothesis, it's probably a little of both. That there's a shifting from the discretionary spend into essentials, and then also this expectation for each household that we will be spending a little bit more. What's interesting, that does dovetail with some of the recent reports that come out of the Department of Commerce as they track retail sales month over month, and moderate increases. So if you look, it's a rear view mirror approach, but what came out of the February report was, you look at core retail sales. Core retail is defined as all retail excluding auto, motor vehicle sales, gasoline, building materials, and food service, so your quick serve. Everything else. January was up 1.7% and February was up 0.5% month over month. Moderate, slight increase, so it's hard to say if that's challenged, against inflation, but it seems to dovetail very well with what you've captured from the kind of signal on the street. The last piece that I think is encouraging, it looks like people will be using less on credit. I think that's good for all of us. From a economic standpoint, we saw the uptick in the buy now, pay later, and so that was actually that was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, and I will also say that we'll reveal the full study in April, but even the buy now, pay later has been trending downwards. So there is generally, people are getting more cognizant of their financial, cognizant of their financial situations. Mark, your thoughts on the data that we just presented?
Yeah, happy to weigh in, and I agree with what David's saying. I think this is probably indicative of I'm not buying more units, but I'm spending more for the units that I'm buying, and therefore it's sort of an inflationary tail. I think it's interesting. These are primarily students online. Is that right, Gotham?
No, we've got industry folks as well as students.
Okay, very good. So, we've seen, sort of the full cycle, because 2-3 years ago, when there was a lot of free money in the market, we saw people trade up, and then, that was very beneficial for many retailers. And then as we've started to see this year, people are starting to trade down, go more towards private brands, or you think about the good, better, best strategy. I think they're going more towards the good or the better, where they were in the best, just to make their dollars go a little bit further. I think the other thing that is interesting, in my opinion, maybe two things. David was right. Retail sales have gone up, but a lot of that is coming from the grocery sector. And the NPD data that I have seen is that grocery is not increasing the number of units they're selling. It's just all been inflation. And that's what's really upticking the total retail base. Most retailers outside of grocery are year to date down about 4 to 5%. And we'll get to online here in a little bit, but it's even worse online. The other piece I want to add really quick is on credit. A lot of retailers have their own credit cards, and in talking to some of the banks, they're starting to see defaults spike quite a bit, and so they're tightening up who they're allowing into to be accepted into a credit card. And so the example that was given to me just the other day is, if you had a credit score of 680, a few months ago, 40% of those individuals would be accepted to take a new credit card. Today it's 10%. So we're seeing them tighten that up quite a bit. So you're going to see some restricted cash on hand for a lot of our consumers.
And perhaps that's indicative of why they're not expecting to purchase with new credit cards as well. Going through the room, Phil, your thoughts on what we just revealed?
Yeah, so I mean, the numbers, I think we just covered them between David and Mark in terms of backup data, but I'd take it from I guess a different angle is, with that information, what could a retailer do, or what can they do to continue to drive their business? Completely agree, basket sizes are not going up right now. I mean, and I don't think they have been for a little bit, to be honest. And I think it's been more of driven by either people are buying higher quality product, or inflation, depending on when you look over the past few years. But I'd say one of the biggest things in this space that can be forgotten, and I think it's critical, is going back to the basics. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the customer experience, the in-stock positioning, I understand COVID had caused a lot of challenges for suppliers, but there was also some retailers who did a really good job to stay in stock. So it was because of their relationships with suppliers and whatnot. But it was, if you think about it as a consumer, not as being in the industry, but just put myself, when I'm a shopper on, at nights or weekends, if I walk in the store and I need these 8 items and I can't find 6 of them, I'm going to be frustrated. Or if I get there and there's nobody there to help me check out, and there's issues with the self-serve, things like that. So I go back to literally I think during these times, we need to look back to the basics, and how some of the best retailers out there, for example, in the New England area, you have Market Basket and Trader Joe's are 2 of the most loyal retailers. And even dunnhumby, I think it was last year or late 2021, did a report about their retailer preference indexes, and those were 2 of the highest rated retailers. And I think it's as simple as, it's easy to shop, you have product in store, you have plenty of service if you need it, and they focus on what they know. They're not going they're not expanding outside of their core business. So I think that's the opportunity that coming out of where we are today, It's going to, and it's driven a lot of loyalty. So.
Kind of previewed our entire study. Like those were the findings of what we were finding is why people shop as well. Brett, bring us home on this specific slide.
Yes. So this is one of the ones that I guess the data was not as surprising to me. I think as consumers, we all probably see some of our behaviors in one of these stats. But similarly, I really think it does support focusing investment on customer experience. Customers need a compelling reason to spend money, especially on some of those non-essentials. And the positive or even differentiated experience is going to be what prompts that. So especially if a consumer has choices or prices are equal or near equal, that's going to be especially important. I think we've seen inflation and the overall economy are really driving a lot of buyer uncertainty right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean a complete halt to spending. I remember a year or two ago, as in-person dining was reopening, we saw food and service costs just skyrocketing. Yet we also saw consumers flocking to restaurants, likely partially due to some of those pandemic-induced nostalgia aspects. But it was also because restaurants were providing an experience that was actually worth paying more for. So if you think about the acquisition of a good or a service and partnering that with an experience, whether it's educational, entertaining, you name it, it really becomes less of a transaction and more of a relationship with the brand. And so that's where retailers can really focus their investments to get the more out of it.
You would think as a professor, I know how to get myself off of the mute, but no, I always mute myself. But Brett, you're spot on, right? Like consumers are curtailing their behavior in some ways, but they're spending too. Like the consumer is still showing signs of resilience. What the next thing that we found, what we tried to ask was how they are spending in this macro and economic environment, and kind of in tune with what was said by Mark and David was, with the inflation environment, a group of people are reducing the basket size. They're seeking more promotions. They anticipate buying more store brands. They anticipate going more to discount stores. We're seeing all of this play out in the data and in real world. Anticipate making fewer trips and reducing the SKU sizes. So I myself could say, I now eat a 6-ounce steak instead of an 8-ounce steak, but I still like my steak, so I will eat it, right? So we're seeing that kind of behavior. I'm just curious around the room, and maybe we'll start with Mark, the retailer amongst us. Are you seeing this kind of play out, and what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is exactly what we're seeing. So traffic count start to dip a little bit, where average units is down, and but the average value of each basket is up. And what's getting us is traffic count down a little bit, average units down, but again the basket is up a little bit to kind of offset some of that. And I think it's interesting. You're seeing a lot more promotion this year than you have in the last few years. We have to, find ways to communicate and educate our consumers on some of the values that are out there. There was a lot of clearance in the marketplace beginning of the year, and so that has, I think, also created some challenges out there for some retailers that didn't have a lot of excess inventory from fall of 22. But from a promotional standpoint, you're going to see more buy 3 for so many dollars, or get 3 for $10 or something like that, trying to get you to buy the multiples. And I'm even seeing in several channels where you have to buy the 3 to get that discount. So they're really trying to get you to pantry load, and I think that's a way to try to bring those unit sales back up. The other thing is, you're going to see in the marketplace in the near future a lot of special buys where manufacturers created and manufacture something, and then retailers have canceled those orders, and they're going to be flooding the marketplace at some point. So I do think that there's going to be some deflationary experiences in the near term.
That's excellent. I'm curious, Mark, just do you see any kind of switching behavior between, since you do have an e-commerce platform as well, like are people trying to look at certain things online versus in store?
Yeah, I will. Well, I think what they're doing is
Mark, you're on mute.
thank you, just like you, Professor. Yeah, you're seeing a lot more abandoned cart in our online business today. And so what I'm expecting is happening is people are putting things in their cart, seeing what the total amount is, and then doing that in other retailers to find that price point.
Wonderful. Now going around the room, Phil, any thoughts on what this means for retailers?
Yeah, so expanding on what Mark just said, I think definitely talking about promotions for a minute. I think you're definitely seeing more promotions, but I would say the challenge is, are you doing the right promotions? Because it's very easy to promote across the store, but is the goal to get consumers into the store, or is it once the consumer's in the store to get them to buy another area of the store? So for example, then previously did some analysis for a pet category analysis actually, and we tried to talk to the category manager about they should actually reduce the number of promotions they were doing in pet food because it was on food and consumers are buying the same pet food they're not switching, they're not changing each week, but so if they're buying it in the grocery store, they're buying it, versus they were selling about 42% of that aisle on promotion. And it was because it was always on promotion. And I think so that promotion can be tricky in terms of when you hear the word promotion of what is the right type of promotion. And I think it's really doing some deep offers to get them in the store. And then once you have them in the store, at that point, it's up to you to make sure you're helping them with not only buying more on ad, but also the right quality. If you have good quality, they're not going out anymore. They're traveling less. They want a treat every so often. They're going to spend it on themselves, which gets back to having, quality on top of price.
We'll talk about some of those topics in a second, but Brett, your thoughts?
Sure. I hope I don't sound too much like a broken record, but I think, again, it comes back to focusing on experience. A good customer experience can prompt customers to spend more, even in an environment like this. I wouldn't be a good former researcher if I didn't bring some of my own stats to the table, but around 86% of buyers are actually willing to pay more when they're going to get a great customer experience. So I think recognizing some of these spending outlooks is an opportunity for retailers to really be more intentional about capturing the purchases that they can, even if they're going to be fewer and far between. If customers are making fewer trips, there's fewer opportunities to capture that attention. So those trips really do matter more. So yes, they need to be easy. They need to be memorable, personalized. But another fun stat to kind of look at on the bright side with some of these maybe not as exciting ones is that customer experience can really influence some of that on the spot purchasing that we see. Almost half of buyers have made some sort of impulse purchase or additional purchase that's actually going to inherently increase that basket size after they had more of a personalized experience. So kind of anchoring to that as the optimistic side can help focus there.
David, any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, so echoing, a lot of what's been said before, but, the first thing is nobody wants to be just in the promotions business. And some of that has been driven not from consumer demand, but because inventory wasn't right sized. There were a lot of challenges even going through, into last year. You look at, there was a so-called pack and hold strategy with certain retailers who, because of supply chain challenges, had a ton of inventory, and then they had to decide, were we going to deeply discount, drive promotion, or hold on to it? Kohl's, for example, was holding on to about $82 million in basically winter apparel, winter coats that arrived too late. He said, well, we're not going to deeply discount, we're going to hold on to that. And of course, there's a cost to that. So, if we think about it from another vector, better understanding the consumer demand and their signal, because nobody wants to be stuck with that glut of inventory, so that you're forced into this promotion strategy. Then the other piece is, okay, what are those relevant offers? The earlier point, is it the buy two and get one? Is it 3-1 get one? I'd offer, there's a couple of other angles. There's the shift, obviously, to private label, but also thinking about, if we're talking about customer experience, what is the differentiated products and services that can be offered, right? So perhaps it's not buy 3 for the deal. It's thinking about as a purchase threshold to get free shipping, or to consultation, or something else. Is it promotions that extend beyond the walls of the retailer? You look at Walmart offering a subscription service for the free shipping, also has a partnership with American Express that with using a specific class of card, you get the Walmart service bundled. And then Walmart is now, similar to Amazon, offering their own streaming partnership, I believe, with Paramount. So thinking about different creative ways to drive value for the consumer, to drive that sticky engagement, I think will help drive an overall offer strategy beyond just another 15% off a product.
Yeah, and it's not even in these constrained environments, it's about value. It's not about always price and promotions. We've touched upon it in many different ways. I just looked at the time and we have so much more to cover, so I'm going to move forward. And so the next aspect of things is, Brett had talked about this point about there are different groups of consumers who can behave differently. And that's a really nice segue. We had actually asked about spending patterns across different sub-verticals in retail. And again, this is looking forward in 4 months forward, how they plan to spend. And this graph statistic out here kind of showcases how spending is going to be based on the next 4 months. Consumer mind, this is mindset, right? Again, I have to be very clear how they plan to spend. So you can see that there are, what we did is a 5-point scale. So decreased spending was broken down into 2 elements. Decreased spending significantly, that means less than 10%, more than 10% decrease in spending. Slightly decreased spending is 0 to 10%, and the same thing goes on the other side with the increase. And then, of course, there is an option of not decrease, not increase. And so what you can see here is a breakdown. There is a segment of people who seem to be getting more constrained and being more thoughtful in how they spend. But there is a good amount, again, the resilience of the consumer, good amount that plans to spend more. And there is a breakdown of how they plan, whether they plan to spend a lot more versus less. So putting this in context, I just want to go around the room and see, like, what would you do if you were some of these particular sub-verticals, right? You can see out here, grocery and restaurants, pet supplies seem to be quite immune to these macro factors, but then you're seeing other sectors that are more susceptible to it. Any thoughts? What can retailers do if they are working in these retail segments? Phil, I'll probably kick things off with you here.
Yeah, so I would say, there's a few things that we've seen out there, and I think it's working well. For example, you have it's similar to what Brett said, but you get into the experiential customer experience there. That right now, a lot of customers are going to these stores as much as to shop as they are as to also entertain themselves, get out, see what's happening, and new trends. And I think a perfect example of someone that that's basically done well throughout COVID and is continue to be strong is a Lululemon. You walk in their stores and there's people everywhere, and it gets back to they stuck with the athleisure space and they've expanded on it, so they get people, what's next, but it's always just a little bit of an expansion in that space. And I think that's where there's opportunities, just like with Dick's Sporting Goods, same way, even though it shows here 22%, only 22% will increase spending. I think there's the opportunity there to talk about the value, and it gets into personal care and wellness. Sporting goods can very well be supportive of that mindset, and being able to kind of turn the marketing from just being about sporting goods to being about how it can help with your wellness will help them drive growth and keep the loyalty, customer loyalty where it is today.
Also keep in mind that some of these sectors have seen a lot of growth during, so people spending more even despite that baseline is a positive thing. All right, Brett, your thoughts on this?
Yes. So looking at this tells me to focus on building connection with consumers. So we often see that many essentials are almost like commodities in the minds of consumers. So they might be more willing to focus not only on brands that are providing a good relationship from a transactional standpoint. They're thinking about, is it cheap? Is it easy? Is it functional? Not necessarily where you want to be as a brand. So if you are one of these non-essential retailers, you really need to focus on transitioning that customer from transactional loyalty to more of an emotional or relational loyalty. So that's when they're starting to say things like, it's my favorite, it can't be replicated, they care about me, or they care about what I care about. So I think thinking about this, it's just as you would build some sort of new relationship with a friend or a romantic interest. Really being intentional about learning about customers, their behaviors, actually catering to them, and finding some of those commonalities are where we're going to see retailers start to be rewarded. Again, whether that's additional revenue, larger basket sizes, more interactions, positive feedback, all those wonderful things.
I love that. Like I love, as a marketing person, I love the pitch for loyalty, and I think we need to revert back to the basics of actually building those connections to build loyalty. Going around the room again, David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think spot on what Brett said. It's
You're on mute, David.
all right. This is something. It's going around.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Yeah. So, just amplifying what Brett mentioned about defining differentiated connection and a sticky connection. I'll go back to like someone mentioned pet supplies earlier. Maybe it's on here. It's Petco's now got their own subscription service. How do you make it easy for consumers? But also, how do you drive that stickiness and loyalty that you're the go-to, trusted retailer or brand? I think this also, I think there's it's not just all doom and gloom on that. I think it's encouraging that there's an expectation that there's a little additional spend in each of those categories. Again, I know that's tempered with the expectation that may be due to price increases and inflation. But I'll talk to one other I'm a data nerd, so we've been talking about basket size might not be going up, but there's one bright light from a recent report that came out of NRF. Easter baskets will be going up. So I was surprised to see that there was a little over $20 billion spent last year. They're forecasting $24 billion this year. That's $3.3 billion in candy alone. Greeting cards, I guess we're still buying them, $1.1 billion. And so it's not just, it's around how do retailers and brands capitalize on that opportunity. Not everybody celebrates Easter, right? So they said about 54% are not celebrating the holiday, but still plan to take advantage of the deals and the promotions. So in addition to the candy and the flowers and the decorations, about $4 billion will be spent on clothing for Easter. So I think that's also that's encouraging and another bright spot.
Wonderful. Mark?
Yeah, just add a couple things. I agree with much of the comments. I think it's important as a retailer to lean in where your business is thriving. So for example, pet, we have a large pet section, and we've seen that business be double-digit increases for a couple of years. And so 2 ways to lean in. One, make sure that you're continuing to look for innovative product for the pets, because we know that it's no longer just a dog or a cat at the house. We're pet parents. You know, we don't have grandbabies. Our kids aren't having kids as frequently as they used to. And so now we have, you know, grand puppies or grand kitty cats. So we're buying things for them. I think, you know, Brett and Phil both talked about the experience. So how do you make your environment pet friendly in this situation? So we invite all pets into our store under 175 pounds, because we have had horses and buffalo come in the store, and that's a little bit large for us to handle. But we have an internal social media tool called Zipline, and inside that we have a group called Furry Friends, and so people post pictures of, you know, customers who bring in their dogs or their cats or their cockatoos or their lemurs or whatever they might bring in, and so it just encourages that, you know, relationship, and I think that makes a big difference. The other categories, things that are softer right now, where retailers have to really be cognizant, is how do I reduce my inventories so I don't get stuck with a lot of abandoned inventory and hurt my margin rates. So you lean in where you're growing your business, and you pull back in categories that are not selling as quickly.
Wonderful. This is great that you're already previewing, all of you are previewing other aspects of the study as well and validating it even before we put it up on the screen. So there are a couple of questions in the chat Q&A session that I wanted to quickly answer. From Scott. Did you see higher income households trading down? Yeah, in our data, yes, we are seeing that, and I see Mark shaking his head, so there's probably some evidence there as well. And Mike had asked, like, why exclude? So Mike, why exclude the boomers? So we had about 12% boomers in our study, which is not representative of the US population. And it says that they didn't respond to the study requests. So that's something that we'll fix over the next few waves of data, and we'll have a more representation out there. Now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to move on to the next aspect of the study. Why do people shop online versus in store? And what we did was we did qualitative studies to understand what were the factors that made them choose to shop in store versus online, and built those factors out, and then surveyed the respondents to rank order them. And this is what we found, and perhaps we'll start off with the online aspects. What we found were that the top factors were price, assortment, and brand recognition. And they're colored green because this is the second round of data that we collected, and in both rounds, these three factors stayed up top and were very important. And then the next two factors were the website design and the convenience of shopping, people talking about how long it took to fill out the details to buy the product and so forth. So given this context, and given that price, assortment, and brand recognition are age-old things that online stores kind of competed on, how can retailers stand out when you're seeing such a proliferation of retail, and still is, right? There you're seeing a lot more retail. So any thoughts? And David, since you've worked in a lot of these contexts, maybe we'll start off with you.
Sure. Yeah, and you're right. So the first couple of ones are not super surprising given the results of the previous study. So if people want to get quality, price, value, and the right assortment, what we might call, you know, from an online standpoint, the so-called endless aisle. So what are the products and capabilities and services that I get virtually? What's interesting and eye-opening is, you know, number 4 as a new emergent, that flow and web design. So when we talk about in a physical space, physical retail store, people want convenience, safety, well-lit stores, easy to find the product. Well, I guess not surprising, people want that as well online. So what can retailers think about? It's, you know, simply put, frictionless engagement, not making consumers jump through a variety of screens and hoops to find relevant products. But I think this is now, the capabilities are now amplified with generative AI. And so you're seeing a hop skip approach now with capabilities, OpenAI and ChatGPT. One example, so Shopify has millions of products on their platform, as do many retailers. One of those challenges is around developing the right descriptions, for products so that they're both relevant and resonate with consumers, also search engine optimized, and help customers find the right products. Well, millions of them have zero description today. So they deployed an app built on generative AI called Magic, so that retailers on the platform simply type a few keywords and magically create those descriptions. We think about the next evolution of this being the product concierge, the assistant, not just to a store assistant, but to someone online, to provide relevant product recommendations and descriptive elements around that product that resonate with me personally. The promises of generative AI are super powerful. So going beyond the capabilities, say basic shopping lists for grocery, but going from meal planning to ingredients to the shopping lists in a matter of seconds. So we're seeing a tremendous uptick in the interest and excitement around how generative AI is going to transform that flow and design of how consumers navigate e-commerce.
I'm going to say the retailer to the last in this question, but Brett.
Hopefully I wasn't on mute for all of that.
No, you were not. Well, that was very good. I was checking the whole time. Brett, we'll get your thoughts on this question, and then Phil, and then wrap it up with Mark.
Yes. So I don't want to give away too many spoilers for your next slide, but I do think it's interesting that price is consistently number one as far as a driver for both online and physical retail. So I like to call out that while price does matter, people often tend to say that it matters more than it actually does when they're in that environment. So any types of investments in remaining competitive with price are valid, but it's important to recognize that this low price leader strategy isn't really going to work for all retailers or even appeal to all consumers. I'll kind of jump on the bandwagon and talk a little bit more about the web design one, just because I think that is an interesting focus area that needs to be on a lot of folks' minds. And I think it's important to really make sure that you're balancing both good aesthetic design, but also good behavioral design. So just part of that is a product description. But I would tell retailers they really need to ask themselves some key questions. So are we providing good mental models of what the product is, whether that's a description, several different pictures to really help people understand that? Does it capture attention? But most importantly, is there a clear path to a desired behavior? So things like log in, start, add to cart, that might seem like a lot of basics. So just to your point earlier, we talk a lot about removing friction and barriers with customer experiences, both online and in person, but it's just as important to set up some of those behavioral nudges and really clear calls to action to help support that seamless experience.
And Phil, any thoughts? And I'm going to pivot since Brett segued it very nicely, I'm also going to show the results for the physical store, which is on the screen right now, so people in the audience can take a view. But Phil, let's just stick with online and just think if you have any thoughts to add to that. And Phil, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I guess it was my turn to be mute. I'd say one other piece to add to that is the trust factor, in terms of consumers trusting the online site or retailer that they're working with, so that they're not finding special, when they go to check out, oh, there's an extra fee here, or there's something else, or they're ordering product and they're only getting 30% of it. So after the second time, if that happens, a couple times, you're going to lose them, because they have to be confident that what they're doing is going to happen, and two, that it's easy for them to be able to understand what they're buying and not having to jump through 7 different steps to figure out what the final price is or what the product is. And the last piece on that is, I'd say it's product descriptions, which falls into both retailers and consumer goods companies, but to ensure that the information that's on the site is accurate.
Okay, Mark, bring us home on online, and I'm going to just go back to the online factors and leave it there.
Yeah, I think a couple things. So I totally agree with what Brett is saying, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But if you think about, let's say you are a horse owner and you go in to a store, I would love to magically change all 100,000 square feet of my store to be a tax store just for that consumer so that he or she can find everything that they're looking for. And what's fun is when we create a headless site, it's extension of products that we don't carry inside the brick and mortar, but it's just, the next series of product or assortments. I can do that online. And so I think the other thing that is kind of interesting is this, call it the flow in web design. The number of clicks makes a difference, as Brett was talking about. But I think too, how do you create that experience so you want your consumer to come back and crave more? And then what is it that we're doing to make sure that we're inviting them back in on the right cadence? So those are all things that we're doing test and learns on. From primarily a brick and mortar, about 10% of our business today is through the e-com channel, but 90% still in brick and mortar. So we're continuing to navigate those things.
All right, so I looked at the time, we have 8 minutes. So in the interest of time, I'm going to really rush through this. It's like, so these are the 5 factors when it comes to physical stores. Nothing should be of surprise. Store associates came in right under at 6. And these are, again, back to the fundamentals of retail. And we just talked about different things that can be done. Just quickly around the room, anyone who wants to just jump in, is what stands out, anything that we can do, retailers can do to kind of leverage that this is what people are looking for at this point in physical retail. There are quite a few comments in the chat about how the store experience and environment is really bad now. So maybe talk about that.
I'll jump in. So I personally love this question because I think it's been super interesting to see how consumers have shifted back to physical retail, especially after being forced towards more of those online options during the pandemic. I still remember it was not too long ago that we were questioning if brick and mortar was on its way out, but in-person experiences are still highly regarded because they're difficult to fully replicate in an online environment. So retailers are needing to optimize the store environment to both differentiate it from, but also integrate it with that online experience. Those customers are going to need a specific reason to actually come into the store. And they're expecting it to, not only be part of their journey, but also they're expecting it to integrate with their digital experiences that are happening before, after, or even during their visit. And I think one of my favorite examples of kind of an innovation leader in this space is Sephora. I don't know if any of our other panelists are very familiar with what they're doing, but they have done a really great job of having in-person experiences influence digital experiences and vice versa. So for example, when you're in the store, a makeup artist can add products that maybe they used on you during a makeover that you can later purchase online, but also products that maybe you've been exploring through the app. They'll direct you to those products when you actually get to the store. And so I think the best part of this strategy is that they're able to combine both that online and offline customer profile. So they can really have a more complete picture of customer behavior. They're able to provide a lot more of those personalized recommendations and really, in a sense, kind of convert that in-store experience to the equivalent of the horse owner, while that's something that typically we've only really been able to see online.
Okay, I'm going to be the taskmaster movers because there are a few more slides I want to do, at least give some flavor of the study. So what we next did was we essentially wanted to understand also the pain points that customers had. And I'm going to share this statistic to kind of move us there, is that we asked them what is their preferred channel or where they want to shop across subverticals. And what you can see is that a lot of people actually prefer to shop online, but we know that e-commerce penetration is at about 15%. But you also see something interesting that is that grocery and food and beverage are things that you want to shop in store. So I'm going to turn to the panelists and review the last aspect of study, which is pain points. Like if people want to shop online, but you're seeing only a 15% penetration when it comes to e-commerce, what are the pain points to actually getting more people to adopt? This is what our study said. These were the 5 factors that we found to be the most important: difficult to verify quality, stockouts, no free shipping, returns were not that high up on the list, let me be clear, poor website design, and poor customer service. So around the room, any thoughts on something that stands out and how retailers can fix these pain points?
Gotham, I'm gonna say really one word, and that's trust. And I think one of the biggest challenges that consumers face, and your number 1 and number 2 are right. So difficult to verify quality. So they want to touch and feel and see the, fruit and vegetable or the product that they're buying that they're going to consume. And second is stockouts. And so it's very important that what we show online is what we actually have. And when we end up saying we had to substitute an item or we had to cancel a particular item, that does nothing but frustrate, because you're buying to a particular recipe.
Yeah. Phil, any thoughts? And then David. Phil, you're on mute.
For both online and in store, I'd say that one piece that's kind of been overlooked is investing in the company employees. Because if you think about even online, if you need something and you get great service, you remember that. If you get bad service, obviously you remember that a lot more. But it's the same with in store. It's the same for both in terms of people. I think we take it for granted that we're just like, oh, well, that they're supposed to be happy because that's their job. And I think that really needs to go back onto the retailers to invest in their employees so that that message gets out to the consumer.
David, Brett?
And I think spot on. I like that, capturing it in one word, which is trust. And it's not hard to understand why people want to touch and feel an apple rather than do that, search for that online. They want to walk into a store. Other categories, they feel more comfortable purchasing online. So can you trust the product description? Can you trust the reviews? When it comes to apparel, can you trust the sizing? In many cases, the answer is no, no, and no. So that's why people bracket and buy a small, medium, large, because a medium is very different. So driving to more clarity and transparency around inventory visibility, around appropriate sizing and recommendations, enhanced self-service, right? A hybrid approach that helps both workforce in store and online for that digital concierge, so that consumers can make more informed decisions and trust that online engagement.
Wonderful. Brett, any last thoughts?
I will be brief. I know we're running out of time, but yeah, I definitely echo the trust and transparency. But some of the things that I really like about these pain points is seeing them as opportunities. So particularly with the stockouts one, I think we've all experienced that, and it can be incredibly frustrating. But it's also an opportunity to, again, build that relationship and that connection. A lot of times when people are frustrated, they just want to harness that energy into doing something that they view as productive. So you can add opportunities to make that productive, both for the customer, but also the retailer. So maybe that's something that is an opportunity to introduce a curated selection of products that are in stock that might meet their preferences, or even have them indicate interest or wanting to be notified of a restock. Whatever it is, if you're giving them that clear next step option, that's where you're going to reduce abandonment and negativity. If done well, might even prompt some sort of alternative or even more profitable transaction.
Wonderful. All right, and this is our last set of findings, which is on physical retail. And probably not any surprise, we've all been in long checkout queues. We've all walked around trying to find a store associate who can be the savior, but can't find the person. Unwelcome store environments, we have enough in the chat that kind of say that. Last thoughts, and we'll add concluding thoughts to that because we're at time. So if you can just go around, pick one pain point and how to address it, as well as your concluding thoughts to it. And I'll start off with you, Brett, and we'll go in sequence.
Sure. So I would say when I think about the future of retail, there are probably 2 trends that address several of these that I'm particularly excited about. So the first one being frictionless shopping, but also digital wayfinding. So when you think about frictionless shopping, we're adding a new level of convenience, whether it's some sort of grab and go model, we're able to eliminate some of the undesirable interactions of retail. So the waiting in line, the going through a checkout process. You don't have to interact with an employee unless you actually want to, which makes those human interactions that you do choose to engage with much more meaningful, that employees can focus on being helpful or maintaining that great store environment versus maybe some of those more basic things like managing a point of sale system behind a counter. The second one, as far as the digital wayfinding, I think this can also solve for several of those pain points. We're seeing retailers really help customers find what they need. And this can help them actually potentially explore new or interesting products or parts of a store, that you can integrate a shopping list or personal preferences with an app or a mobile site. And that can really help you navigate the store, opting to optimize for efficiency, but also recognize that sometimes you might want to opt for a really neat brand experience. And that could be based on some of the customer's real-time needs and feedback.
Wonderful. Phil, your thoughts? And you are on mute.
Yep, I have the double mute because of my other microphone. I'm going to keep going back to this. All 5 of these tie back to customer experience / labor. And where I'm going with that is locating the product. Obviously, yes, there's wayfinders, but that gets into, is the product in the right place on the shelf anyway? Is there even product so stockouts, there's a lot of technology in supply chain right now, really investing in that. However, there's limited opportunities to do real-time inventory. So that's a major challenge, because a lot of times it's measured at a point during the day. Or second is the product could be in the store, but it's in the back room because either the employee can't find it or they don't have time because they're now have 4 other things they're working on. And I think that falls into literally why 3, 4, and 5, all the same in terms of checkout, unhelpful associates in an unwelcome store environment. Gets back to, if the employee is overwhelmed and stressed, then you're going to have that potential risk there. And I just keep going back to focusing on doing what you know best and doing it well. And I think that's a big opportunity for these retailers to go back to what made them successful years ago.
Talking about retailers, Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is, I feel like all these things that you guys are talking about is absolutely true, but it starts with investing in your associate. If you invest in your associate from training, a career map, helping them understand how they're making a difference in their consumers' lives, then they invest that same energy back into the customer experience, which then takes care of your business. And I think sometimes we think of it backwards, and we think of it, oh, I got to invest in the business, or I got to invest in the technology to get these things. And I'm telling you, having the right people in the right aisle makes such a big difference in the relationship and ultimately the trajectory of the business.
David, bring us home.
Yeah, look, spot on with from an associate category, and people think about unhelpful associates. At the end of the day, everybody in retail should be thought of as a customer service agent for the business. We have to arm them with the right tools to answer the questions, right? Deliver that service with dignity. It could be devices, it's connectivity. Arm them. We're using this term now at Microsoft called co-pilots, right? How do you give a co-pilot to everybody in the organization to help them accelerate the discovery and recommendation process so they're delivering more value and service to the consumers? So I'm excited about the promise of generative AI and how we can enable a co-pilot. You're absolutely right. We have to invest in the workforce, give them the right tools.
Right tools and the right data. And with that, we are about 2 minutes past time, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, panelists, for being here. Thank you for supporting our students. Thank you for the audience I'm sorry I couldn't get to a lot of the questions. Bad on me, but we'll get to this at some point of time. Thank you all. If you have any questions, please do reach out.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.